Around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble! Black man dies after Minneapolis police officer pins him to the ground by his neck. I've got Omar X with me. Omar, do all lives matter?
It seems that all lives may matter in the eyes of the Lord, but in the eyes of some people, in particular in this case, white people, the lives that really matter are just white lives, because we've seen this happen a bit too often lately.
Okay, we'll run a clip of the story in a moment, and you've brought race up already. This has been portrayed in the media as a white cop killing a black man. Here's the footage on my screen now. I know that you can't see it, but there is a white officer pinning a black man to the ground. Apparently he resisted arrest. Apparently he was arrested for forgery, and this would seem to be a brutal use of excessive force to pin someone to the ground that has not been guilty of a violent crime. Whether there were weapons on him, I don't know. The police are saying that he resisted arrest and was subdued forcibly, and then they noticed he was having, as they described it, a medical emergency. Well, lack of oxygen to the brain through choking would be an emergency for anyone. But is race a significant factor here? In many publications, it was immediately publicized as black man killed or dies, not killed, but dies after white officer arrests him. And I've got another story on the screen that we'll come to in a moment.
Well, the tragedy with this, the police officer having his knee on the neck of this deceased gentleman is just so common. We saw it with Eric Garner, who said, "I can't breathe." If the man is lying on the ground for 10 minutes with a police officer, with all his weight and his knee on the man's neck, and that man is saying, "I can't breathe," you think that police officer would think, "Hey, maybe I should just ease up a bit. Maybe he can't breathe. Maybe he could be seriously hurt or even killed." But that didn't run through the mind of the police officer at all. He just wanted to hurt this man as much as possible. And perhaps if the cameras weren't there, we wonder what else would have happened. In many other cases that we've had, we do wonder what happened because no one saw this. We saw this not long ago with Ahmed Arbery, who was just going for a jog, who was shot dead by a former police officer. Someone told me a couple of weeks ago that the police individually are okay, but when they get together, it's like a gang, and it's a very bad gang. In fact, the clip that you showed, you saw an American, your viewers saw an American, I guess an Asian American or a Chinese American person standing there as a police officer. You may see other black police officers when the white police officer is killing Eric Garner, or when he's killing any young black African American person, the police officer that's beside him, that's assisting him, would be black, or he would be, in this case, even Chinese, trying to control the people of color. So it is a race thing, but at the same time, it doesn't seem to be a categoric race thing. It's like a group, it's like a gang, and it's just unfortunate that this just keeps on happening. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speaks of separation. He wants a state in the South, and a part of me thinks that perhaps we should allow this for them. 400 years of slavery and certainly with no reparations. They never got their acres of land. They never got the mule that they were promised. So perhaps giving them a state in the South somewhere would not be such a bad idea.
You think that might be an answer to this phenomenon of yet again black youth killed at the hands of police officer, some very often white, as you mentioned, not always. You mentioned Ahmad Arbery, former police officer and son charged in the shooting of black jogger. It would seem that this happens again and again, and there's a couple of other stories also from not so long ago. Here's another one on the screen. Shocking moment. Man, 21, filming himself on Facebook Live, is shot dead by Indianapolis cops chasing him while he shouted, "Please come get me." This is very recent from this month. In the chat, Craig Haxon is mentioning Mark Duggan. That's a story from the United Kingdom. In California, here's another one on the screen. Don't shoot him no more. California police face backlash over killing of man in Walmart. Yet again, black man killed at the hands of the police, and I don't know what colour the police were. But you said it's a very common occurrence. It's a very common story in the media. That leads me to believe that it is common. But are white people ever killed at the hands of the police? Does that happen? And if it does, is it not portrayed in the same racial way?
Well, when we talk about reverse racism, in this case, I think a case not too long ago, you had a Spanish person, you may know of I'm not sure if it's Tamira Rice or there was another killing. So the police officers, it's not exclusively white. It does seem white, but as I mentioned earlier, it's like a gang. It seems like a gang rather, and they get together, and it's when they assist each other. There's not a white person. I guess there's more white police officers than the minority officers, but it seems that they've got each other's back, and even when another one or any one of them is killing any other, they back each other. I think there's a clip on YouTube where they are they haven't found anything in the vehicle, and they're just dropping some weed on the seat, and they've been caught. I'm thankful that we have these cameras, these body cameras, and other cameras people have in their pockets, and which is the phone, and they record, and we hear more about this, but it's just getting too much. This happened. This is nothing new. This is a continuation really from the 60s and even before lynching and so on, and it just continued. 80s, 90s. Ahmed Adiallo, Louis Theroux did the documentary on BBC Two where he met the ministers of the Nation of Islam, and at that time they had killed a young African student. He had been shot by the police officers. 4 police officers shot him dead, a young student, and then they walk free. That's also a tragedy. You had Craig mentioning Mark Duggan. That story, if you or your viewers were to really fastidiously look at this story, the whole thing makes no sense. Where was the gun? It was impossible for him to throw the gun that distance. The cab driver also testified against the police. So that story, we do wonder, and I'm thankful that it's not on the same level. I have to be honest that it's not on the same level in this country, but we're talking about the USA today. We have our odd situations here and there in this country, thankfully not too often. But USA, I do believe that separation seems to be the only answer now, because it's a tragedy. It's really sad, and this cannot continue. We can't have white police officers, or any officers for that matter, just killing like they did with this young man. And that's it. He has a family. His entire life is absolutely over, and all that police officer had to do is just ease up a bit and not put too much pressure on his neck. And I think every human being deserves a trial. They are innocent until proven guilty, and that's what we live by in this country, and that's what they should live by over in the USA.
I have to say, on an individual basis, this case does look like a horrendous, use of excessive force, pressing down on someone's neck. I've worked in the security industry and been in situations where we have to restrain an individual, and it's so vital to not be, doesn't sound like rocket science, choking someone in order to subdue them, because that can kill people. You said this goes back deep in history. I want to look at numbers just from recent years. Number of people shot to death by the police in the United States from 2017 to 2020, and consistently, the largest ethnic group that is shot by the police is white people. Okay, there were more white people than black people shot dead by the police 2017, 18, 19, and 20. However, black people make up a much smaller proportion of the population. So the problem is the discrepancy and the disproportionate amount of black people, and it's disproportionately men. If we want to talk proportions of population, it's hugely disproportionately males who are shot dead at the hands of the police. But we're looking at race tonight. Black people, who are 10 to 12% of the population, are being shot at a much higher rate than the pound for pound than the white population, who make up the majority of the country. However, why then, to my recollection, do we hardly ever hear about a white person killed at the hands of the police? It happens more often than when it happens to a black person, but you've only got to punch in killed by the police into Google News, and you will see a ton of stories outlining this now familiar story of unarmed black man killed at the hands of the police. Why is there such a discrepancy between our perception of what happens and how often it happens with the reality? Take nothing away from the disproportionate rate at which black people are killed at the hands of the police, which is why Black Lives Matter have a case to be argued. But why do we never hear, it seems to me, the story of the white man killed by the police? Or do we? Have I just blinked and missed that one?
Well, you mentioned that it's proportionate. You have 50 million black people and you have 370 million Americans or so altogether. And so naturally you're going to have more white people. It's inevitable. But
I'm not disputing that.
There's something you're missing here. And that is when you have a shootout. See, white people, you've noticed, and I'm sure you're aware of the shooters that they have. They had them at the cinema when Batman, The Dark Knight Rises was on. You had other white killers in schools all over. You had the guy who shot 150 people at that the concert that was taking place from a hotel room. So you have white people. Now, those white people are shot dead. And although in this country we don't believe in the death penalty, nor do we believe in something as such where someone's life is taken, we're completely against that, and that's ingrained in us, and rightly so. But those people are shot at that position when there is a shootout taking place. So a lot of the white people are shot during incidents when it's a shootout.
Well, a lot of them are handcuffed, or not even handcuffed, and taken for a Burger King, aren't they? Or a McDonald's in the back of the van.
Yes. That's also very strange. Dylan Roof, after shooting the black Christians, was taken there, and that is a story on its own, which is unbelievable. But white people, when they do, if they are shot, when they are shot, and they have a shoot, and I'm sure black people at times have the same situation, but we can't have our police officers or any police officers anywhere showing so much disdain and having the nerve and the audacity and just being so free and not concerned about the ramifications, and having the temerity to just take someone's life as such, there was no threat on that man. He could have just lifted his knee. There was no threat whatsoever. He had other police officers around him also. He could have even tasered him if he wanted to, but he just didn't. He had complete disregard for his life, and unfortunately, this ends in tragedy always.
And how do you explain the disproportionate representation in the media of these stories? Is it because there is a racial element to it, or very often, or perhaps there is, and therefore it's fair that the media portray these stories with the racial categories in the title? Because you would never, although it happens more often, a white man is killed by the police than a black man. That happens more often in America, and you would expect that to be because white people make up a larger proportion of the population. But that's a rare story in the media. The story that happens less often but disproportionately when a black man is shot at the hands of very often a white police officer, those stories make it into the news at a much higher rate, and we've reeled off several of them tonight. And we go to a caller. Are you happy to take a call, Omar X?
Yes.
Okay, caller on line one. You're through to Omar X. What do you think about this situation? This story, or yet another story of someone killed by the police.
Killed by who? Police?
Ah.
Which one?
So we've had. Here we go. All we know at the minute is that a black man was arrested in Minneapolis, and the police put their feet on his. Yeah. Hello. Who's this?
Hello.
Yeah, he was arrested and he died from choking.
It's Harpreet Singh. You're not singing me welcome back.
Okay, welcome back. Well, this is a caller that Omar X, I don't know if you're familiar with this. We had a caller a long time ago. He's drifted away from the channel and he seems to be choosing tonight to make his reappearance. What's your take on the story, Harpreet?
Well, in India, we have a gay rights marriage now. I'm very disappointed in it.
Okay.
So thanks for that. Sorry, Omar X, you were saying.
No, I wanted to ask the caller Hardeep Singh if this problem is in India. If he's in India, do you have? And I hear that there is a caste problem where the police officers are from a particular caste. I don't know, Dalits or whichever, made from God's chest, or allegedly, I should say. But they treat the poor and the downtrodden who were in their own kind of books, those people who were made by or from God's feet, I think, something as such. And so those people are treated terribly. And so you have that kind of like class system. And I was going to ask the caller if that's a problem in India that he sees on a regular basis or not.
That's a good question. He may well call back. He's a persistent caller in the past. America is highlighted for its injustice and its white supremacy and white privilege, but perhaps it's one of the fairest societies in the world. It certainly is by law. The Constitution states that every man is created equal before God, whereas in India, the world's largest democracy, apparently, you have a caste system which at its heart is a racial system, is it not? The richer, lighter skinned Aryan background people from the north that came into India from the north reigned supreme over the darker Dravidian origin, untouchable Dalits at the bottom end of the caste system. Isn't that right?
Well, ironically, untouchable over in the West means somebody great that is untouchable, and somebody with power. I think they used it in the movie, Al Capone's movie. They were the untouchables, and in India,
I think you can have another chance to ask your question. We got the call. Is that the same Harpreet?
Yes, Harpreet.
Welcome back again. Omar X has got a question for you.
Hardeep.
It's Harpreet, but go on.
Harpreet, I beg your pardon. In India, do you have this sort of problem? Do you have police officers that have lighter skins attacking people with darker skin, or other police officers from a particular caste or culture?
Much. We enjoy.
So you enjoy what? Sorry, attack.
The brutal attacking on the police. We attack them and they attack us.
So there's no peace basically in that situation. How do you know?
No, we have peace. We just don't have peace with people who try to eat the cow.
So you have a problem with people eating cows, beef.
Trying to eat our cow. Yeah, we have a big farm there. My family. And its family always coming, trying to take the cow, eat the cow,
Why don't they just go to the So, are you referring to theft here? Do people try to steal your animals?
No, sexual assault. Sorry to be so graphic on the air.
No, it's okay.
Some of them trying to take the cow to private place to do jiggy,
No, but I don't think you have any evidence of that, surely. If somebody's stealing your cow,
these people, they're neighbors,
Now, Hardeep, 1 second.
It's Harpreet, but go on.
Harpreet, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. When the cow is taken from your father's farm, then you don't know what that cow is taken for. It may be taken for sale. It could be taken for the people, as you mentioned, to eat. It could be for other reasons. Maybe they just take it to a different part of the country. So I don't know why you're saying.
People in India have this cultural activity where they're taking the animal, because animal can't talk English, so they're taking the animal to a private place, and then they're having fun,
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for your call. That's someone going on a different. We'll devote a whole show to that one night. The different crimes that might take place. Back to reality. I've got a graph on the screen, Omar X. It says the percentage of adult males incarcerated by race and ethnicity in the USA. This was from a few years back, and it's probably still relevant now. 4.7% of American black males are incarcerated, that is to say, in prison. 1.8 for Hispanics and 1.4 for all. Okay, and whites are down at 0.7. So you can see white people are much less likely to end up in prison. I mentioned that many of them are killed by the police, but at a lower proportion than the black population, and white people end up in prison far less often than black people. We've got one more caller. I don't know if they would like to address this topic. Hello, caller. We're talking about crime in America. Have you ever been to America?
Yes, I have, yes.
Okay, where did you go?
My name's Johnson, by the way.
Well, hello, Johnson. Not Boris.
No, that's my last name.
Okay. Magic. Is it Magic Johnson?
I name it my first name so people get confused. My real first name is quite embarrassing.
Not a problem. We go with Johnson for now. Johnson.
It's Edward.
Thank you, Johnson. Edward. During your travels to America, did you perceive any racism from the police? To what? Racism from we're talking racism and the police in America.
No. I have a clean record. I mean, when I arrive to the customs, I get a lot of grief. But when I'm out in the streets, I blend in with the normal average thug, and I tend to get away with a lot of things.
May I ask how you would describe your ethnic group? Other, okay. Because in America, Britain and America are very different. Over here,
that means non-white.
Well, Asian here means Indian subcontinent.
Color neutral, and I'm gender neutral as well.
Right. Well, you're going to be white. You're not going to be anywhere on this chart, then, are you? And the other thing that
my liberal views. So I want you guys to be very sensitive because you might break a little, sensitivity here, so please be very careful. I'm a gender neutral, color neutral young man who's having problems right now with his body, trying to discover himself.
if you're gender neutral, Johnson, why are you describing yourself as a young man? Just out of interest.
Because that's what I like to believe. But in my past life, which was 6 months ago, I was a female named Stacy. Don't laugh.
Thanks for your call, Johnson. Sorry about that, Omar X.
No, it's nice to hear different points of view.
There's always any point of view is always welcome on Lessons for Life, and if you want to get involved, as this person was, it's 07491 751 203. I'm just looking at the graph that shows us the disproportionate rate of incarceration, but I think you knew that already, Omar X, and you could probably tell me why.
Everyone really knows that, but it's a root problem. I know you have some black viewers. I know you have a UFC, is a world UFC or MMA champion who's on regularly.
Andre, Muay Thai. He's a Thai boxer. He was multiple world titleist.
And it's a root problem. If you look at black people's homes, unfortunately, many, according to Minister Louis Farrakhan, that when the woman is pregnant, many a time the father-to-be just walks straight off and goes to his actual wife. So lots of women are duped. I don't know if this is in every culture, but he makes a mention that it is a particular thing where the black woman is the most used and abused woman on earth. You also, sadly, in the black community, I feel that the black brothers and sisters, they lose members of their family. They lose a father, mother, brother, and we all lose. It's not exclusive to the black people, but in our side, certainly in the Arab or Asian side, or even the Asian, as in the Chinese and beyond, we have a family kind of orientation where you have somebody else would step in as the patriarch or matriarch, or even more so the brothers. It's his role. He's going to be like, I guess you may have a kind of like a godfather, but more stringent person looking after the entire family. Godfather is exclusive to that person, but you have people, looking after the wife and the husband. Everyone is looked after. So I feel that that's lacking in the black community. I hope your black listeners would call in and correct me, and happy to be corrected, but I feel that that's lacking in the black community, whereas other communities where we have this, and even as you mentioned, the green graph that you have there, and you have people, fathers going into prison, the percentage is men. Those are black men going into prisons. What's happening to the